We're very happy to be here. I'm Louise Foo.
And I'm Skou. And together we are the duo, FooSkou. And yeah, it's kind of nice that our names rhyme. We're from Denmark, and in Danish it doesn't rhyme at all. So
it's
yeah.
FooSkou. So
In Danish.
That's a little different.
Yeah.
So we want to talk a little bit about our collaboration, how we met each other, and why we're working together, and what we're working on. So we actually have been friends for 15 years. We've been friends for many years, and we're friends long before we started working together.
Yes, so we have been shared many ideas, and we've been drinking a lot of coffee talking about what should we do, how should we be creative, should we be musicians, should we work with art, how could we combine these fields. And yeah, we tried a lot of different kind of stuff. We have a common background in a various field of different creative genres.
Yeah, we've both been working with a lot of different medias, like photography or video or music,
Yes.
Theater, you name it.
Yeah,
and especially music. We've both released albums and toured with various bands.
So yeah, so as Harry said, I think like a lot of our motivation for creating these sound and image works and pieces, and working in that theme is pretty much that we are self-taught musicians. So in trying to like understand what sound is and the systems behind sound, we like to kind of see if we can enter it in a more like visual kind of way.
We are also both, we love experimenting, and we both are very process-oriented. I studied at the Interactive Telecommunications program, which is an art and technology program in New York. And I would work on projects like making music from this bowl of milk with ink in it, or I would create a color sensor that translated color to sound. So these little experiments with the physical computing and sensors, but I didn't really know where to take these experiments. And here I'm looking at what sound looks like, and how do you exhibit this kind of experiments or create experiences for other people?
Yeah, this thing we had in common with experimenting. It came out like in different kind of ways for both of us. For me, I also worked a lot before me and Louise started collaborating with different kind of materials. And here's a few examples where I worked with projections on glass, plastic, and other kind of materials. And I also worked with manipulating the film that I projected on the materials and created different kind of installations. Also, I've been very interested, and still am, in like older techniques which has a big amount of handcraft. And here is some examples of some of my older work made by silkscreen, lithography, and other old printing techniques. So when I did my thesis from the academy in Denmark, I was very focused on trying to see if I could take my musical process and turn it into like a visual expression in a way to combine my passions. And I did a lot of experimenting with these different kind of techniques, these old printing techniques, and also trying to build more atmospheric installations that could kind of express this poetic feeling that music often have.
And I was going through sort of a reverse process. I was translating visual information to sound, and I developed a program that could turn sound or turn images into sound, looking at some old optical sound instruments from history, and then thinking about how can I do this with the tools available to me today.
And we discussed these ideas a lot, and we Skyped a lot because we were in different places of the world. And at some point, I remember we talked about, Louise talked a little bit about, but these visuals that I want to transfer into music or into sound, what should it be? Should I just like make something random, or? And I was a little bit like, these visuals that I created from my musical inspiration, how should I actually make sound out of it? So it kind of made sense to try and see like what would happen if we took the visuals that I made and we used Louise's tool to try and translate or transform these visuals into sound. And that was pretty much the beginning of our collaboration.
Yeah, so this is a few years ago, and since then we came from a lot of the same research, but we also have been sharing our research, and we're inspired by a lot of the same things. Here, this little quote is from Francis Bacon's utopian novel from 1627, where he is imagining in the future there will be these sound houses where we study sound in all these various ways. There will be all these different sounds that we don't know of yet. And this is something that we've been very inspired by, like the past, how you looked into the future and imagining and speculating about how it will be. Another thing that we're very inspired by is the physics of sound, the amazing shapes, visual shapes that sound and the physics of sound create or can create, and the experiments that has been made throughout history in this field. Also optical sound, like I mentioned before, like this Russian synthesizer, the ANS synthesizer, where you draw a score and then you play the sound of the score. It was made from 1938. I think it was finished in the late 50s, but such an amazing instrument. I just have a little sound bite here. So this is something that we can really share to be excited about.
So what happened on that video clip, if some of you maybe didn't get it, was pretty much that this illustration on the right side is kind of scanned through the machine, and then it's transferred into sound. And it's kind of a big inspiration for us. I think also if you haven't tried it yet, then you should go out and try format number 1 in the corridor and see if you could also kind of relate to that reference.
Yeah. It's making sound from light. Another big inspiration is visual music, or the idea of music having a shape and a form. Like here, Fischinger and Kandinsky.
Also, we've been really interested and still are in graphic notation. And we also see our works as a form of graphic notation, and like we kind of see it as that we facilitate people or the viewers with an open score, and then it's up to the people or the viewer to interact and experience it themselves.
So this is from when we started out working together. We collaborated on our thesis projects. And we would have this digital and analog workstation in 2 different parts of the world. And now we're in the same part of the world, but we still have those elements in our work with the analog and the digital. And maybe sometimes we will collaborate with a programmer, but we will still have those elements. And that's very important to us, that there's the physical part and the part of the craft, but then also the digital and
yeah, like the meeting of the analog and the digital, and also like that we as, like that each of our interests that get represented in the work, and that it has this combination of something made by hand with something more, what can you say, like, yeah, something digitally, something which is maybe hard to materialize.
And I think every piece we've ever worked on is about sound. That is something that is essential, and trying to make that tactile and physical, and thinking about where we're heading in the future.
And here is some few snapshots from our time in New York, where we have had different residencies, and we have lately had a residency at Pioneer Works, the Center for Art and Innovation in Red Hook, where we've been working on a new format called Format Number 2. And these residencies has been a really good opportunity for us to be able to have a place to work and focus on developing our new practice.
Yeah, for us the format of a residency is a really good way of, for a period of time, really focusing on one project and then moving on to a different space and a different place and then working on another project.
So here we want to show like a few, we'll go through some of our final works. And this one was actually one of our very early works called Bird Print. And it's a silkscreen print and an iPhone app. And we've been working with spectrograms. And for those who maybe doesn't know what a spectrogram is, a spectrogram is a visual representation of sound, and there's two common ways that you often represent, like two common ways to visualize sound. And the one is the sound wave, as we often know it, and the other one is the spectrogram. And the spectrogram was interesting for us to work with because it was this visual representation of sound, and the app that we made could go in and read these spectrograms and read that information and turn it back to sound. And we have a little video clip of the work, so it's easier for you to understand, I think. I don't know if there's any sound.
I think so the piece is an interactive installation. It's an exploration of the connection between image and sound.
These images is created of a research of bird spectrograms. It's like how bird songs actually look like. The viewer can play this visual score with the iPhone.
It was really great to show. So this is a very recent piece that we have made that is also where we also have been working with spectrograms. So this is actually a sound recording of me saying this is a study of visual sound. You can see the little segments, how that's all the little parts of the sentence. And what we wanted to experiment with in this case was how we could recreate audio effects like reverb or delay or effects like that but with hand or by analog means. So here in this case, it's the same spectrogram, but on the left side, that spectrogram has a delay or a reverb on it. And then we've been trying to recreate that in hand and then listening to what that sounded like. And here is another example, and here is a third example of a delay. So let's listen to some of them. This is a study of visual sound. 1.
This is a study of visual sound.
2.
This is a study of visual sound.
3.
This is a study of visual sound.
4.
This is a study of visual sound.
5. 6.
This is a study of visual sound.
It just continues and continues.
Yes. So now we are at format number 1, which is the piece that we're also showing in the corridor. And we've been showing format number 1 in some different contexts, and also in some different, we've been installing it in different ways. And in addition to these different installations of format number 1 and exhibitions, we made a lithography print in a limited exhibition, because we thought that it was like an interesting thought that people could buy a print, they could bring it home, you can frame it, and then you can play your own print at home. And I'd like to demonstrate for the one of you who haven't tried format number 1, just like very short, how it works. So white is no sound, and black is sound. And I don't know if you can hear it, but if I play it like up high in the scan line, then the frequency will be high or low. So that's format number 1, but it's a lot more fun when you try it yourself, actually. But as I just said, we installed it in different ways, and here is some of the, it's still like the same graphics we use, we just reuse it in new ways.
We arrange them in different ways, but it's all the same elements. And those elements are little graphic patterns that come from different places, but it's all musical systems, like musical mapping systems or notation systems, like MIDI systems, MIDI notation, or musical notation systems like this one. Or here it's an old music box, where it's also this, the music is mapped into this score.
So common for all of these graphics that we are using is that they're all based on our research of musical notations from the history. And here is one of our installations of format number 1, where it's like a smaller mural, and we built it up by wooden cubes. This piece is called Major Minor, and it's also a part of format number 1. The graphic is based on major minor MIDI chords, and we wanted to make it more spatial, and that was actually what kind of led us to creating format number 2, where we were interested in trying to see like how can we make a more spatial experience, and how can the way that people interact and move in space influence the sound and the experience.
So with format number 2, we have these spheres installed in the space, and then the app there's not this same linear way of moving around with the app. It is randomly picking out circles and playing them circle by circle. So in that way, it's almost like a little musical composition. But let's hear it.
So you can play circles or spheres or actually anything round. And as closer you'll be, as louder the sound will be. Oops.
So this piece we have installed in different ways. This is some of the process of how it could be arranged, and this is some documentation from a little show we did in Copenhagen.
And here's some documentation from another show we did in Brooklyn. And what's next?
We want to do more formats.
And especially we're like really interested in like this way that a format creates your like the way you kind of think about music and sound is very much related, we think, to the formats which are accessible. Like for an example, the other day there was some young kids coming to visit us when we were installing the format number 1. And one of the boys asked us, well, have you thought about making a song with format number 1? And it's kind of a question that we often get. And I understand that also with our backgrounds as musicians. But I think we are both like also interested in talking about like what is a song, and this idea that a song is like 3.5 minutes and it has a start and it has a beginning, is that also created because of the formats, like the early formats? And today we actually have like a lot of different possible formats that we could explore and create with. So that is something that we want to dig into.
Something that we like to explore more. How we could possibly redefine what music is, for example.
And I think like also in general, we find it interesting to like all these barriers between like what is music, what is sound, what is art, what is design. Try to work with placing, like trying explore these limits a little bit. And I think we are about
I think that's
out of time.
That's it, yeah.
So thank you.